Welcome back to The Rancher's Voice, the podcast where the heart of agriculture meets the pulse of today's industry. From policy changes to pressing issues, The Rancher's Voice dives into the stories that matter most to ag producers.
In each episode, we will cover topics including legislation, leadership, and the agricultural lifestyle. So be sure to subscribe to The Rancher's Voice everywhere podcasts are featured. If podcasts aren't your thing, watch us on the Montana Stock Growers YouTube channel.
Hello and welcome to the Rancher's Voice Capital Edition. I'm Rayleigh Honeycutt, Executive Vice President of the Montana Stock Growers Association, and you are going to get an update from me this week. You heard from my lobbying partner, Ellie, for the last couple weeks, but Ellie is off in DC this week working on some public land issues, and so I'm holding down the fort here in Helena and excited to give you just a few quick updates on what is happening in Helena. I'm going to start our update with a few bills that we've been supporting and tracking through the legislative process, and they've had some votes that I think you'll all be interested in. So let's start with House Bill 119. House Bill 119 is the bill to establish a Montana Cattle Committee. The last place that this bill was heard was in the Senate Agricultural Committee a few weeks ago, and that committee did take executive action this past week. Unfortunately, this bill was tabled in the committee with a 7-4 vote, and kind of that ends the journey for House Bill 119. We are looking and hearing that there may be some additional things happening regarding a study bill, but at this point, I have no firm updates for you on that. But House Bill 119 has kind of ended its journey in the Senate Agricultural Committee. Additionally, House Bill 886 is a newer bill that we have been talking to you about. That bill was how water rights were going to be handled or administered following adjudication, and that was through a division court model. Earlier this session, you heard us talking about a district court model. That was a bill that was somewhat the complete opposite of this bill. That bill failed through its process, and House Bill 886 was introduced. It's a fairly substantial bill. It took a long time for it to get introduced just because of the amount of detail that had to go into it. Representative Ken Walsh was the sponsor of that bill and did a fabulous job getting that bill introduced into House Natural Resources Committee. Montana Stock Growers was a proponent of that. We have policy and have continued to support a divisional court model for a variety of different reasons, mostly because I'm having that centralized divisional court and giving producers the option to then petition down to a district court model, or a district court is the model that we felt is the most efficient, timely, and makes the most sense for water rights administration. Unfortunately, that bill was voted on and it kind of had a roller coaster or a wild ride throughout the process. It was voted on in the committee and ended in a tied vote in the committee. With a tied vote in committee, the bill it failed, and so kind of sat there in committee. Representative Walsh then the next day did make a motion from the floor to blast that out of committee, with the acknowledgement that it had a very good hearing, lots of conversations both on the opponent and proponent side, and he felt that it needed to have a floor discussion. That bill was successful in getting blasted onto the House floor, and then following that, the next day it was heard in second reading, where it ended up in a tie vote of 50-50, ultimately killing the bill. So we were disappointed in seeing that, but very much an important bill that I hope that we see moving into a future legislative session, and not the result that we wanted, but definitely had a lot of merit and a lot of good conversation around it. Also regarding water, Senate Bill 358 was heard a couple weeks ago, but executive action was taken in Senate Natural Resources regarding that exempt well. That was the exempt well bill that was done by the Comprehensive Water Review Committee, one of which I served on, and we proposed a new process in which exempt wells would go through, having different zones based off of science and how water was available both legally and physically. That bill did move out of committee, but did end up failing on the Senate floor. And so very disappointed in that. But we will not give up trying to advocate for senior water rights and make sure that water rights are protected, as exempt wells are a very valuable tool, but we definitely need to close the loopholes, and is not really status quo is not really dealing with those loopholes that we see development taking advantage of. Last week was also a big week as it related to the state budget. So House Bill 2 is our state budget bill. They did a full day session on Wednesday and got that bill passed out of the House, which is great. It's in a really good place. The House did a really great job vetting and discussing and moving through all of the decision packages related to the state budget. Now that bill is being transmitted to the Senate, and the Senate this week is actually already hearing bill hearings related to the bill. So let's talk a little bit about this week. I just mentioned Senate Senate Finance and Claims hearing our House Bill 2 bill. That will be a multiple day bill hearings, and then we are hearing that on Thursday the Senate will do a full day session to discuss all of the merits of House Bill 2. The budget is one of the biggest things that has to be done during the legislative session, and so for it to be out of the House, already into the Senate, and moving quickly through the Senate is an indicator that we may be getting close to the end of legislative session. So we'll be monitoring that closely, wanting to make sure that those agencies that we support in their budgets, specifically in Section C, natural resources, are fully funded and they are receiving the requests and decision packages that they have worked throughout the session on retaining. Other than that, this week has also been a very big week, or is teed up to be a very big week for confirmation hearings. So many of the boards or positions that the governor appoints have to go through Senate confirmation. And we've seen quite a few of those this week. We'll see even more next week. And again, as we get closer to the end, all of these hearings need to be like wrapped up and tied in a nice little bow. So lots of momentum and lots of bill hearings as it relates to confirmations as well as the budget. This week, we were able to stand in support for a few confirmations. Both the water judges, Judge Steve Brown, as well as the new associate water judge, Judge Bina Peters, both had their confirmation hearings in Senate Natural Resources. Their confirmations were voted on and moved out of Senate Natural Resources and are headed to the Senate floor for final confirmation votes. Additionally, we also saw in Senate Natural Resources that DEQ Director Sonia Nowakowski had her confirmation hearing, again, voted by committee, headed to the Senate floor for final confirmation votes. And then in the agricultural space, we had quite a few confirmation hearings as well. We already had done a confirmation hearing for Eric Moore a few weeks ago. His was a little ahead of schedule. But we were able to stand in support of the other two Board of Livestock appointees that were up for confirmation. So Jake Fettis as well as Greg Richmond both had confirmation hearings on Tuesday. They were voted on, headed to the Senate floor. And then Livestock Loss Board as well, Doreen Gillespie, Joe Kipp, and Jordan Mannix were all up for confirmation and are headed to the Senate floor as well. So lots of bill hearings, lots of confirmations, and lots of conversations around budget this week. Hopefully that gives you a quick update. We look forward to talking to you next week. We'll get an update from Ellie on all of the things that she heard and saw and met folks that she met with while in Washington, D.C. And we'll have a few more updates from the Helena Capitol as we are wrapping up the final weeks of the 69th legislative session. If you have any questions or would like to learn more about any of the bills that we're talking about, always feel free to reach out to us via email or our phone number. And thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on Capitol Edition.